Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fensky. Bruce Franks' time in the Missouri legislature was brief, but impactful. The St. Louis native was galvanized by the Ferguson protests. He ran for office in 2016. That year, he toppled a member of a local political dynasty in a hard-fought special election. In Jefferson City, he won passage of a bill declaring youth violence a public health epidemic. He also won re-election. But he resigned after just 3 years. He said he needed to deal with his mental health. And he said he was leaving St. Louis. Since then, though, Franks' profile has only risen, and that's due to St. Louis Superman. The short documentary profiles Franks. It debuted last spring at the Tribeca Film Festival, and now it's nominated for an Academy Award. The film starts by showing Bruce Franks with his young son, King, who was born the day Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson. Let's listen.
You know what song I heard today? That I ain't heard in a long time?
What?
We ready. We ready for y'all.
You sang it when I was 5.
You ain't 5 though. You ain't 5 to what day?
August.
August what?
9th.
August 9th. You're gonna learn about August 9th real soon. Something else happened on August 9th when you was born.
What happened?
I'll tell you when you're 5.
And that's the Academy Award-nominated short, St. Louis Superman, profiling former state representative Bruce Franks. And here to discuss the film with us today is Smriti Mundhra. She's the co-director of St. Louis Superman. Smriti, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we're also joined by co-director Sami. Sami, thank you for being here.
Of course. Thanks so much for having us.
Now, neither of you are from St. Louis. I'm wondering, how did Bruce Franks first get on your radar?
I read a newspaper article about Bruce in one of the local St. Louis papers. It popped on my radar one day and was immediately captivated. I sent it to Sami, and just said there's something special here, and we should dig a little deeper and reach out and see if maybe we can reach Bruce.
And so, what made you decide this isn't just an interesting story? This should be a documentary.
Well, we were looking to do a story about the 2018 midterm elections, but most of the stories that we first explored were just kind of surface level, and were going to be dated really quickly once the news cycle was over. But when Smriti pitched Bruce to us, it was like, here's a story that has depth and has this timeless quality to it because of the trauma that Bruce has had to deal with in his personal life and the heroics that he's doing in the present. There's not many stories out there. We're experienced enough as filmmakers to know that there's not many stories with the gravitas and just the power of Bruce's story. So we really, really jumped at the chance.
Smriti, was it hard to get Bruce interested in opening up to you and giving you the level of access that we see in the film?
Yes. The short answer is yes. It was initially, the hardest part was getting him to respond to our many emails, DMs, tweets, etc. I think we attempted to reach him for several months, maybe like 3 months, 3 or 4 months before he finally responded. Actually, he had his legislative assistant, Danielle Spradley, his legislative assistant at the time, respond to us. I think there was, Bruce had a natural skepticism about, filmmakers from New York and Los Angeles reaching out to him about doing a documentary. I think particularly, coming out of Ferguson, a lot of, people, a lot of journalists, filmmakers, et cetera, have come into the community to tell the version of the story, that is in their minds, and not necessarily, humbling themselves to listen and learn and reflect back the story that the community is telling. And Bruce was skeptical, which, is completely understandable. But from the beginning, I think we just really wanted to just meet him, and see, the process of making a documentary, as you described, is like very intimate, especially the way that Sami and I make films. And we just wanted to meet him and see if it was a good fit on both sides. So when he finally relented to that meeting, I flew to St. Louis, and the idea was just to meet him for a coffee. And lo and behold, that coffee went really well because we ended up starting filming that same day. And once we were in with Bruce, there was no barriers. He trusted us. We recognize that we are not from St. Louis. We recognize we're not from the community that he's from, and we're not here to come in and quote unquote tell his story. We're here to bring the tools that we have so he can tell his own story.
And there's a really compelling scene in the film where he's speaking at a community center, and he he summarizes just so many of the things that he's gone through. I want to listen to that now.
I'm from 4300 Gibson. My hood don't look no different than any other hood out here around Fairground, the West Side, or nowhere else. The common denominator was we was poor, we didn't have resources, we didn't have those beautiful buildings.
That's right.
Police didn't show up fast when we called. Back in 1991, two men was outside arguing. We was outside playing baseball. My big brother, Christopher, he was 9 years old. One of the guys put out a gun. The one shot, and my brother was killed. My dad spent 65% of my life in jail. My little brother, my best friend, Rodney, just got home last year. Got locked up when he was 14, and he just got out. He's 31. If you would have told me on August 8, 2014, 4 years ago, that I'd be a state representative, I probably would have cussed you out about 3 different languages. But then Michael Brown was killed. Although it was Mike Brown, I saw me, I saw my son in 15 years. I saw all the youth that I mentor on that ground. And I felt like, you know what, this is my time to stand up.
And as we see in that scene, he has just such a gift for connecting with people. And I'm wondering, after the time you spent with him, what would you attribute that to? Sami, any thoughts on that?
Well, I love that you chose that scene because that's personally one of my favorite scenes. And I remember just the context around it. And Bruce was feeling a little down that day before he went to Mission St. Louis, the organization where he spoke. But then after, Bruce was like completely energized by it, by those connections and that sort of synthesis that you're describing. But Bruce has this, he says that your storytelling is your superpower, but he also has this superpower of empathy, and the ability to read a room, which is difficult to sort of carry that with you when you maybe don't want to know how a whole room is feeling. You want to shut that off, but if you're meeting with, men who are formerly incarcerated who are looking for your help and you draw inspiration from them and they from you, that can be a really, really powerful thing. So those twin superpowers that Bruce has, the storytelling and the empathy were really like sort of, shining lights in the film. And, you played the opening scene where both of those things are on full display with the moment with King, his son.
And yet, as you allude to, this was a really tough time in his life. How soon did you get a sense that, oh man, he's really dealing with some stuff here?
For me, it was immediate. I was aware, just through my day-to-day work and, reading stories about Eric Garner's daughter, and Vanita Browder, Khalif Browder's mother, who had both passed away right around the time that we started filming. I was, cognizant of the toll that activism, has on people, particularly on people of color. But when I went to St. Louis for the first time, on our that first time to go meet Bruce for coffee, the thing that personally struck me the most was the moments in between when he was, sort of doing his constituent work, when he was, the moments, because I was with him for 14 hours that day, and it was the moments between when he was speaking to an audience or at a rally or on a, talk show, when we were just driving around or sitting, in one place to have a coffee or a meal. when you could feel the weight of all that work on him. And what really struck me was that, and at that time he was very actively working to pass his bill, and so he was essentially every time he got up in front of a crowd to speak, he was speaking from his heart and he was speaking from personal experiences, which means ripping open, his deepest wounds, day in and day out. Like, just imagine having to tell the story of the absolute most devastating day of your life 4 times a day. That's going to take a toll on you. And so I saw that pretty immediately, and I think that was something that we explored together with Bruce throughout, the process of filming the documentary, because we saw that trauma compound during the time that we were filming and editing the documentary, and Bruce was very open about sharing it with us.
We're talking to Smriti Mundhra. She's the co-director of St. Louis Superman, the film about Bruce Franks that's up for an Academy Award this Sunday. And we're also talking to her co-director, who is Sami. Now, in the film, we see Bruce doing a rap battle. And it's a great scene. But his opponent tears into him and uses to do that a story about him that ran in the Riverfront Times. And Bruce was on the cover. The headline was Inside Man. And the deck said, "Cop critic Bruce Franks is now an unpaid cop consultant. Can he really reform law enforcement from within?" And his opponent even wears a T-shirt showing the cover of this newspaper. So here's how Franks responded to that in the battle.
You saw Bruce's banner and think that you could with the Hulk? I mean, Bruce Franks like Bruce Wayne, businessman, lived a dark life. So who better to answer those signals when my city needs a dark night for those dark nights? Hey, COC, y'all bought me y'all big dog like this was necessary? Everybody claim they Cujo till they get found in a pet cemetery. He write balls, I write bills. What's levels to this? I told y'all, I ain't come to play a motherfucking round, and if I lie, I'm fine.
And that's from the film St. Louis Superman. Sami, this is such a different side of Bruce. He can be so soft-spoken. Were you surprised by what you guys witnessed there in that scene?
I wasn't really surprised by the intensity of Bruce, and we were fortunate where one of our key creative partners on the film is a really talented St. Louis filmmaker named Chris Renteria. And Chris actually shot that sequence and just did an amazing job. But like Bruce talks, and he talks about this in the film, about the way he modulates himself and his tone depending on where he's at. If he's talking to like a conservative Republican talk show host, he talks in a certain way, and on battle rap he'll talk in the way that in the clip you played. But one of the struggles that was going on when he was in electoral politics was he wasn't getting enough of a creative outlet. He was sort of, as Smriti was saying, he was, having to go to these places and talk about his trauma over and over again, but not having the release and the freedom and the autonomy the way that he does in his battle rap. So, since leaving elected politics, I think that's just freed up his schedule so he can be more creative. He can focus on, on battle rap, and that is really a release. And, he has other creative outlets too, but that's sort of the one that, he's at the pinnacle. And I think he's really bringing the form, not to be pretentious or anything, but having witnessed Bruce's career in battle rap over the last 2.5 years or so, you can see how he's like changing the form of battle rap, like both by infusing politics into his battles, but also talking about these issues of mental health, of, just dealing with trauma. And that's been really exciting to witness.
So he did end up quitting politics, as you say, and I'm wondering how that ended up changing the film. You must have been a little bit surprised when he made that decision.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise. Not that we were very aware of this, how he was struggling. Sami and I, we were, in touch with Bruce, daily almost. I talked to Bruce almost every day during the editing of the film, and was very aware of everything he'd been going through with, the deaths of his best friend and his godson, and how that was, just compounding, the depression and anxiety that he was going through. I think the reason that his decision to leave his seat was so surprising was, not that we always knew it was the right thing for him. That was very clear. But it's we don't live in a world where people have the courage to give up power, especially, in order to take care of themselves. People believed in Bruce, and they believed in the version of Bruce that they saw, the superhero that they saw. A lot of people didn't know how much he was suffering inside. And, I think it's understandable that a lot of people felt betrayed and disappointed when he left elected office. But having been, with him, talking to him through that time on a daily basis, and having had this much more intimate perspective on his life, than I think a lot of people had access to, we knew it was the right decision for him. So we, under the guidance of our executive producer, Sheila Nevins, who's an absolute legend of documentary filmmaking, we put an end card, that explained his decision to leave office and why. And because it happened after we had finished shooting, editing the film, had already premiered the film, Sami and I wondered, do we need to include this element, in the film? And Sheila really convinced us that no, people are so invested in this journey, and they need to know where it ended up, and this is the honest truth. And I mean, that really was the right decision to include that detail at the end of the film. I think it, not only is it a more honest film as a result, but I think it's a better film, and I think it really adds more nuance and more depth to the journey that we've seen, for 28 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think without that, I think, it is just such a better ending that you acknowledge that reality. So, Smriti Mundhra of St. Louis Superman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And co-director...
Excited to represent St. Louis.
And co-director Sami Khan, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And good luck to you both on Sunday at the Academy Awards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.